Hi, it's Henry. You might have forgotten me. I've been off of this medium for a while here. Uh, I am going to try to knock out a few videos today and post them over the next few days. Uh, I my general viewership is kind of dropping, and I'm not sure if I need to do anything different to gain any attention, but or what. But it matters not. What I'm going to do is move forward. And one thing I've been working on, rather than making the videos, is preparing a video series, a really long, exhaustive, and very exhausting to me, and I'm sure it will be to you when you consume it, if you do choose to do so. Um, a video series that is music related. It's not going to be episodes of The Bottomless Well or the music thing I was doing before. I will periodically revisit The Bottomless Well. Um, and of course, I'll be continuing Blue Review and some film reviews. And I am going to be doing some socio political stuff. Been doing a lot of research and thought about that as well. Uh, but in any case, I would like to use this video as an opportunity to introduce this long series of videos I'm getting ready to embark on. So this is like my most, I guess, ambitious project for my channel. I've considered doing ambitious projects before concerning media that I enjoy, art and music, pop culture, such as I'm into that, and obviously I have a tremendous amount of ephemeral knowledge of that floating up here. But I wish I could do something profound at this time, like do a whole comprehensive series about the world and the dire shape we are in, especially in America, and rhapsodize endlessly, philosophize. Um, Maybe one day. So until then, I have zeroed in on the crux of my current interest as far as a project like this goes, and it's music. So it is going to be a particular subgenre of music, which it actually has kind of a wide and vaster than most would conclude set of parameters and signifiers, and has spawned a larger and more diverse body of work than at first glance may be assumed. So it's called space rock. So space rock has various meanings to different people who are into music, and probably no meanings to anyone who isn't involved in music. And I think the first thing that comes to mind when people talk about space rock, who have been into rock for a while, especially like psychedelic or prog rock or heavy rock, they are essentially thinking of Pink Floyd. Seems to come to people's minds first of all. Excuse me, it's not an indictment on Pink Floyd there. The ironic thing is Pink Floyd does wield an incalculable amount of influence on that subgenre of music. They're a key band. I'm not going to say the key band or artist, but they do predate Hawkwind, who pretty much codified the genre. But even at the same time, Hawkwind was codifying the genre into what many people see it as today, and many bands who play in that vein There were also influences coming from other countries, specifically Germany, but some others as well that were, you know, the whole krautrock movement. A lot of it was synonymous with their take on space rock, and legitimately is space rock. And the krautrock kind of movement or sounds or whatever was originally called cosmic music. I can't pronounce German, even though I'm mostly German. Um, but anyway, that's cosmic music. So, and this is kind of what I'll be covering, cosmic music, but not just space rock, cosmic music, but also like science fiction sounds, recorded sounds, science fiction albums, themed albums, maybe even a few science fiction film soundtracks if I feel the music is important or emblematic of this an aspect of the subgenre. So yeah, so usually people think of Pink Floyd and they think of Hawkwind, and then there's been different phases. You know, I mean, the '70s, yes, a lot of people thought of krautrock and so on, and then uh, you know, there was like newer space rock like Ozric Tentacles, which was very Hawkwind flavored. And then somehow in the late '80s to maybe mid '90s, space rock began to be applied to like shoegazer bands with, you know, ethereal washes of guitar and effects and melodies laying on top of them, you know, much like, though not to equal of Cocteau Twins, but much like, you know, bands like Lush and Curve and Swerve Driver, etc. So there came, you know, My Bloody Valentine. They've even been called a space rock group before. Groups like Spacemen 3, which wrote no real songs about space. They just had that name, but they had that, you know, whatever, that shoegaze kind of vibe. There were bands like Hum and Failure as the '90s went on, and you know they touched on that Flying Saucer Attack, but really those groups lacked something. Uh, it keeps me from classifying them within a my personal history of space rock, which is what I'm endeavoring to begin today with this introduction. So I'm calling it Sonic Futurism 101. So it's like a class, I guess. But there's also 101 works, 101 albums that are emblematic to me that either that fit my criteria for space rock. Um, so what are my criteria? I want to set that out and get that plain, and then we'll get into like we talked a little bit about the history of things, but I've omitted quite a lot of early things that are very important and adjacent things. But pretty much the straight linear Wikipedia you know view of space rock within rock music from the late '60s to the late '90s. You know that was kind of what I was um, purveying, but there's a lot more to it than that. Dare I say, infinitely more to it than that. It was hard to narrow it down to 101 works. So here are my criteria for my Sonic Futurism 101. I'll call it playlist, which will be these albums. Um, First of all, for it to be considered, it's going to need to be a work that, of course, is related to, you know, directly related to, evocative of science fiction, specifically space, outer space, space travel kind of things, but also other variants on science fiction, such as artificial intelligence, robots and androids, dystopian futures, you know, post-apocalyptic scenarios, you know, alien invasions and advanced science, brain science, and altering the mind and body, genome, mutants, anything that kind of comes under this, raw kind of this catch-all that is science fiction. So I'm not calling it science fiction rock because space rock is one element of science fiction music. I guess I'm just going to call it that, but I'm calling it sonic futurism because it really is music that, in its sounds and or lyrics, uh, evoke create a futuristic atmosphere, posit a future where technology is more advanced, or society is more advanced, or society has collapsed, or humans have changed somehow, or robots have taken over. The themes are kind of endless. So I have another criteria is I've tried to cover a variety of these themes. Of course, the space rock, squarely outer space, interstellar travel kind of thing, that will be a huge chunk of this covered. But I'm not going to shy away from any of those other kind of science fiction subgenres or themes that I've enumerated. So I try to be as comprehensive as possible on that front. What qualifies an album, a work, as a work of sonic futurism? Or yes, well, once it has those elements I mentioned, what specifically does it need to have? What can you hear it, and is there something that comprehensively makes the album as a whole rather than the sum of its tracks into such a work? So one would be um, usually but not always, they're going to be either concept albums or thematic albums that are themed out in one general direction, even if the theme is as loose as just different science fiction uh, songs about different science fiction subcategories. Of course, Hawkwind has made a career of that. And so something about it has to be science fiction-y. So, okay, the song titles obviously imply, especially if they're instrumentals, they imply themes. But if they have lyrics, then the lyrics are going to need to touch on those concerns. The music can be of different genres. It can be somewhat straight ahead within its genre, be rock or reggae or hip hop or electronica, but there's always going to be within that the way it's produced, presented, packaged, the effects that are used to enhance it are going to evoke a spacey, a psychedelic vibe, which, not all psychedelic music is space rock. Not all space rock is psychedelic music, but quite a lot of space rock and science fiction music are indeed psychedelic. Those are kind of sonic and mood qualities that help qualify them. But there are psychedelic bands and albums that are really more about other things, such as, well, largely drugs and drug experiences, mind altering experiences. Sometimes that goes into like Eastern religion and rewiring your brain. And if that stuff, steps enough into science fiction, then I will consider it. But if it's pretty much just in the like Ayurveda or Buddha Hindu kind of cluster here, and whether it involves like acid and the bardos, as in the Timothy Leary book, The Psychedelic Experience, where he was telling you how to trip and use the Book of the Dead as the playbook, or if they're just kind of almost sacred works. Those are a bit rarer, but they can be very psychedelic as well, and very kind of mind altering sound. But I generally am leaning towards it having some kind of relationship between uh, a somewhat uh, off the mainstream, off the norm of reality sound, and uh, coupled with the thematics, either in the song titles, song lyrics, subjects of song lyrics, and or the album artwork and presentation. So that's a pretty wide thing. And what it boils down to really is electric music itself. You're probably not going to hear any acoustic space rock bands. I mean, you might hear like filkers or whatever they call them at conventions, singing songs about Serenity and Game of Thrones and such on acoustic guitar, but that's kind of beyond the purview of what I'm trying to do. These are all professional works. Some are kind of underground. Some are very mainstream. I don't say very mainstream, but very well known now, critically acclaimed, and I've sold a lot of copies. Some are virtually unknown. Some only were recorded decades ago and are only surfacing in recent years. Excuse me. And but like I said, it's really the whole thing about electric music. The sound of the guitar, the distortion, obviously, but not just that. The effects, the flanger, the phaser, the chorus, um, the reverse gate, um, the echo, of course, and reverb, uh, and we can go on and on, but those are some of the common ones used and combinations thereof. Electric guitar with the right effects signal processor can create just about any sound imaginable. Synthesizers, of course, as implied by the name, synthesize just about any sound imaginable. So they can also they have a slightly more unearthly or unworldly, unnatural kind of sound than the electric guitar. The electric guitar is kind of the extension of technology into the uh, age of electricity, mass communication, into the space age, the ubiquity of such technology to where it became common in music by the middle of the last century and onwards, and it became more experimental as the century waned. With the synthesizers and such, you're talking about technology experiments that were being made, electronic experiments, some of which were musical in nature, but some of which were just sonic kind of experimentations, and some of which were more scientific, and people programming circuits and then ended up creating music. Sometimes programming the circuits to where the music almost creates itself, whereas artists like Laurie Spiegel. So um, in that case, we're at the next level of the science fiction uh, paradigm, in that the synthetic music is less human hands involved, uh, less humanistic sounds, naturalistic sounds, uh, electronic sounds. Yes, they could be made in outer space or by a UFO or by a high tech piece of machinery. Um, basically, the way a robot's mind is wired, we could replicate that effect in music with synthesizers and electronics and audio generators, and have all this has been explored. So the current permutations on space music, science fiction music, and space rock are pretty much just that, permutations, but they are uh, played by younger people. They're fresh and energetic, and and of course the technology is even more advanced than ever, so they can reach even further for any other sounds that have not yet been utilized in music, or that have been signatures of this kind of music. So as far as I think, those are all my parameters. So, like, if an album matches up with most or all of those things, then I would definitely say they're going to be a great candidate for my 101 albums that I'll be discussing. So, what I'm going to do is, I've been taking a lot of notes I've gathered all the music, the playlists, etc. I've been taking a lot of notes, and what I'm trying to do is take notes on each individual artist and album to have some experience in speaking somewhat confidently about that. Some of the stuff I already know a lot about, and a lot of it I'm learning for the first time ever. But I want it to kind of flow. And there's also concepts that come to me as I'm listening to these pieces and taking down notes, and they're kind of ideas and analyses or ways of looking at it that just kind of I arrive at. Not everyone may agree with them, but just insight that I'm feeling uh, when I'm wrapped up in the atmosphere of this kind of music. Um, and so each episode of this thing going forward is going to uh, probably encompass, hard to say. It could change from episode to episode, the number of albums covered, but I would say at least 4 to 5 albums to do it pretty good justice per show. If some don't take as long as others to explicate on, then maybe I'll get up to 5, 6, 7 albums in a show. If there's something particularly in depth that I need to discuss, maybe I'll pull back to 3 or 4 albums. But I'm always going to try to do at least 3 to 5 albums every episode without fail. But I'm going to try to cover as much ground as possible while still giving it the detail it deserves and sharing what I've learned. Since I can't play you the music because of copyright hassles and my own technological limitations, I am going to be providing links to where you can listen to this music, links to whole albums, and if an entire album is not available to listen to from beginning to end, then I have created my own playlists, including every song in the correct order of those albums on YouTube. And I will give you the link to get to that playlist so you can listen to the album as is meant to be heard. So most of the albums are going to be on a playlist, and then the ones that weren't available in one piece, I'll have that list of playlists. And I have a master list, which is from the beginning to the end of all the albums that I'm covering, and I'm doing them in chronological order of release. So I'm going from the beginning of music that kind of took a leap forward from experimentation no one was really hearing about, to a commercial venue that kind of ignited on a wider scale the interest in, and I guess thirst for, these kind of otherworldly sounds. And then there's a few works that further that sonically and thematically. Not all of them are completely spacey. Some of them are rooted in their prime genre, whatever that may be. But still, the album titles, the album themes, the way the album's presented, the overall presentation is very science fiction, hardcore, very very spacey. So I'm going to present that, and then I'm going to go through the evolution over the years of how we got into space rock and et cetera, and of course electronic music, but also and along the way, how similar, how this kind of vibe made its way into other genres of music. I'm going to present representatives of those albums that are complete works along those lines, and I'm going to cover works from various countries from all over the world. I'm going to be spanning 65 years from 1956 to 2020. So the next episode will begin with 1956. Very important work, and I'm hoping you guys will tune in. I'm going to cover as much as these early works next time as I can, and then I'm going to kind of keep going from there. I want to throw out 1 or 2 final qualifiers or parameters as to how I'm choosing this. I may choose an album by a band that someone watching may enjoy and go, well, yeah, man, this is an important space rock band. This is an important album. Why isn't that album in there? Like, why is he covering an album by that band that came out later that's not as seminal? Or why isn't he covering one I like more? Or why isn't he covering one earlier along the timeline of my personal history? So the reasons for this are trying to find a seminal work that encompasses everything we talked about, qualities, and advances the historical narrative, the ongoing development of science fiction music up to the present day. And then the final qualifier is, quite frankly, do I like the album? Do I really like the album? So there may be, an album you think I should pick of an artist that you like better, but if I'm not quite 100% down with it and not feeling it, not feeling myself, feeling the vibe within myself musically, or I'm not feeling that it uh, addresses the concerns that I've just been enumerating to qualify it, then I won't include it. And there's actually a handful of bands that uh, have works that fall under these kind of categories that they're just not quite up to where I want to include them in the list. And a couple of them I think will be kind of surprising but I will explain at the time what made me choose them. I'll do that with each album, and I'll explain what made me say exclude other works by those artists. Um, and again, there's the is an album seminal, so I may not uh, put the first album by an artist that was a pioneer in space rock, even though chronologically it's important. But after a couple of years, if they did a more seminal album that summed up that period of their work, that body of work, and is higher overall quality and even more cosmic, then I'll select that one. So all kinds of criteria I'm trying to meet here. They're mine. They're purely subjective. You can make your own lists. You can just say, hey, screw that covert guy. He knows nothing about space rock. He's been taking too many psychedelics himself, or maybe not enough, and that's all good. So I will labor forward on this. It will probably be a number of days at least before the first proper discussion of albums in chronological order uh, is posted, because I want it to be as good as it can be. So I'm going to try to wrap this up so this won't be very long, half hour, about as much as I need to go on about this. But to reiterate, this series is going to be called Sonic Futurism 101. The subtitle that I have on my playlist is A Personal History of Space Rock and Science Fiction Music in 101 albums. So I will see you on another video, and I'll see you on this little journey here in coming days. Welcome to the days we've made. Take care.